Chapter 9. Corey suddenly felt very cold. He climbed out of bed and walked in darkness over to his bedroom window. He checked to make sure the window was closed. Then he reached down and felt the radiator. Heat was coming up full blast. He stood there for a long while trying to get rid of the chill, staring out at the silent stillness of the backyard, lit only by a pale half moon. The voice on the phone still whispered in his ears. Corey reached up and pulled his black curls hard, trying to make the harsh whisper disappear, trying to make the threatening words stop repeating in his mind. It didn't work. Realizing his chill came from the inside, Corey stepped away from the radiator and, tripping over a pair of sneakers he had left in the corner of the room, made his way back to bed. Someone had threatened his life. Someone knew where he lived. Someone knew how to reach him. Someone knew him and knew he was interested in Anna. Someone wanted to make sure he stayed away from Anna. But who? Was one of his friends playing a joke? No, this was no joke. This was for real. The whispers were filled with true menace, true hatred. The threat was sincere. Stay away from Anna, or you'll be dead too. Who was it? The strange, puffy-cheeked young man who answered the Corwin's door? Maybe. It was hard to tell from whispers. Hard to tell if it was a man or a woman. Corey closed his eyes tight and tried to drive the whispers from his mind. He felt a little warmer now, but he was still far from sleep. He turned onto his side, then slid over onto his other side, and tried sleeping on his stomach. For some reason, he found himself thinking about the strange neighbor who had stopped him that night on Fear Street. He had been thinking about that man all week, picturing his worn gray slicker, his stubbled face, the menacing way he had stared at Corey. He said he was a neighbor, but why was he directly outside the Corwin's house so late at night? He had claimed to be walking his dog, but Corey had seen no dog. And why had the man warned Corey to stay away from the Corwins? Was he warning Corey, or threatening him? Corey forced the man's face out of his mind. He decided to think about Anna instead. Those clear blue eyes as bright as a doll's, their dramatically red lips on the pale ivory skin. He remembered the dream where she was kissing him again and again. The phone rang. He was still wide awake, but it startled him, making him jump straight out of bed. He picked up the receiver at the beginning of the second ring. Hello? The word came out choked and dry. Corey? Is that you? A tiny voice, very faint. Yes. His heart was pounding so hard he could barely get the word out. Can you help me, Corey? He had spoken to her only once, but he recognized her soft, almost childlike voice. It's me, Anna. Anna Corwin. I know, he said. Then he felt terribly foolish. How would he know that she would be the one calling him in the middle of the night, unless he had been thinking of nothing but her for weeks? I need you to help me, she said, speaking rapidly, her voice just above a whisper. I don't know anyone else. You're the only one I've talked to. Can you help me? She sounded so frightened, so desperately frightened. Well, why was he hesitating? Was it because of the first whisper call telling him to stay away from her? Please, come, quickly, she pleaded. Meet me on the corner of Fear Street, just past my house. She sounded frightened, but her tiny, breathy voice almost made her sound very sexy. The chill Corey felt now wasn't entirely fear. It was mixed with excitement. He looked across the room at his alarm clock. It was 1:37. Was he really seriously considering sneaking out and meeting a strange, frightened girl on Fear Street in the middle of the night? Please, Corey, she whispered, now more enticing than frightened. I need you. Okay, he said, not recognizing his own voice, not sure it was him saying the word. Hurry, she whispered, and the line clicked off. He listened to the silent phone for a few seconds, trying to figure out if it was awake or dreaming this. Had Anna Corwin really just called and begged him to meet her? He had been thinking about her, searching for her all week. Was it possible that she had been thinking about him at the same time? The idea was more than a little exciting. But why is she sounding so frightened? So frantic for him to come at once? And why did she want him to meet her out on the street? This street. Fear Street. Corey had started to pull on his jeans, but he stopped as he remembered where Anna lived, where she wanted to meet. I'm 16 years old, he told himself. I'm not a child. There's no reason for me to be afraid of a silly street. but he had to admit that the idea of waiting alone for someone on Fear Street in the middle of the night was pretty frightening. He suddenly remembered another Fear Street story in the newspaper, this one from the previous spring. Two cars going in opposite directions on Fear Street late at night had collided head-on. A Fear Street resident heard the crash, ran out in his pajamas, saw that both cars were filled with badly injured people. Some of them were unconscious. Some were pinned inside the crushed cars. He ran back to his house and called the police. The police arrived less than 10 minutes later. They found the cars crushed together in the middle of the street, but both cars were empty. There was dark blood on the seats and the blood on the street, but all the passengers had disappeared without a trace. No sign of them was ever found. 6 people, 6 injured people who had been trapped inside 2 cars, vanished in less than 10 minutes. Corey finished getting dressed. He knew he had no choice. He had to go. He had to go to her. She needed him. Sneaking down the steps to the front hallway, he tripped in the darkness and nearly fell. He grabbed the banister and steadied himself, hoping his parents hadn't heard. Taking a deep breath, he continued down the stairs. He groped around until he found the car keys on the counter in an entranceway. Then he silently let himself out of the house. He zipped his down jacket against the cold and jogged to the car. He put the car in neutral and let it glide down the drive. Then he started it in the street as far as from the house as he could get. I'm getting pretty good at sneaking around, he told himself. But why am I doing this? Because Anna's in trouble. He turned down Mill Road and headed south toward Fear Street. Clouds had covered the moon, and the street lamps cast only dim lights on this narrow old street. He put on the brights just in time to see a large gray animal scamper out into the highway. Whoop! It wasn't time to slow down. A single bump told him he had run over it. He looked in the rearview mirror, but he couldn't see anything. He slowed for a few seconds and decided to keep going. Nothing he could do about it now. He suddenly felt sick. What was it anyway? A raccoon? A badger? It was too big to be a rabbit. It must have been an opossum. He wondered if it was stuck to his tire. Yuck. He forced himself to think about Anna. There were no other cars on Mill Road. He passed a few trucks going the other way, their headlights causing him to squint and look away. A swirling wind seemed to come up the moment he turned onto Fear Street. The wind pressed against the front of the car. The car held back, as if it didn't want to go here. The inside of the windshield had seamed up, and he struggled to see. He slowed down as he passed Simon Fear's burned-out mansion. Bare trees rattled and creaked in the wind, the low branches scraping at one another. He stopped and wiped the windshield with a rag he found in the glove compartment. Now the glass was smeared, but he could see a little better. He passed the Corwin's house. It was completely dark. He stopped and stared at it, looking for any sign of life, but there was none. Had the call been someone playing a joke? Had he driven here for nothing? No. It was Anna. He recognized her voice, and she sounded too frightened for it to be a joke. He pulled to the curb at the corner. The wind rushed through the trees. Leaves swirled and scattered over the street. He turned off the lights but left the engine running. Maybe I should get out of the car, he told himself. She might not be able to find me if I stay in here. But he remembered his last visit to Fear Street, the strange neighbor, the animal house, and he decided to wait inside the car. He switched off the engine, then he switched on again. I'll play the radio. At least it would drown out the deafening, dreadful wailing of the wind. But then he remembered it might drain the battery. He didn't want to be stuck at 2 in the morning on Fear Street without a car that wouldn't start. He turned the engine off again. The passenger door swung open. He started to scream.